On this episode of ResiWeek, CEDIA acquires the Tech and Business Summits, Amazon drops the price of the Ring, and Uncle Richie has a fireside chat. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek episode 115, I Will Survive.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Daylight, the leading producer of high-quality projection screens worldwide, and by Peerless AV, the official outdoor display provider of Daytona International Speedway.
Welcome to ResiWeek. This is your weekly wrap-up of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv, and today I'm pleased to be joined by my good friend. You know him as Uncle Richie, or at least I know him as Uncle Richie, and if you don't, you should. It's Rich Fregosa. He is the principal and founder of Fregosa Design. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Mellow West Coast greetings. Actually, hail-filled West Coast greetings here in California.
Did you get hail? Are you going to be okay? We had ice storms in April. We have snow on the ground.
We had like a 30-second of frosty material on our asphalt for about 2 minutes. It was awesome.
Did the entire,
From the inside, I watched.
Did the entire state shut down?
Based on Instagram photos, based on Instagram and Facebook, it may have just not posted.
That's fantastic. And then we are joined by my good buddy, Tim Albright. He is the founder of this here channel, AVNation.tv. How are you, sir?
I am well, sir. How are you?
I'm fantastic.
And we also had white stuff on the ground.
Yeah, it's terrible.
16th of April. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
which almost slowed construction of the brand new AVNation embedded location that
they're working on it.
Be found in. Yeah,
you know, we moved a week ago, Sunday, and it snowed that day.
Hey, we got a lot of stuff to do. Come on.
I'm sorry.
Let's roll with the show, my friend.
Oh, yeah. Not my show.
No, it's not. It is my show. And because it's my show, we are going to kick off with our first story. This one is close and dear to my heart. CEDIA has acquired the Technology and Business Summits. This is a event that was founded by Mark. I always get his last name wrong. So Mark C. Thank you. Chikowski. He is the founder of this event. If you don't know what this is, this was a bunch of rep firms essentially that came together and created kind of like a trade show, something not unlike the ADI Expos and Avid Vendapaloozas and things such as that. The big difference was that it was a bunch of rep firms that came together, all essentially competitors, came together to put on this event and allow integrators and dealers to get together to learn about products, do a little tabletop trade show, as the like, etc. Big news being that CEDIA, Tabitha O'Connor, the CEDIA CEO, announced this late last week, that CEDIA has gone ahead and purchased this show. Mark is going to stay on in an advisory consultant role for the next couple of years. And kind of the key thing to me is that CEDIA at the moment has no plans to change this show. They're planning to keep the format and go down this road and continue to do it. The biggest thing and the biggest statement that came out was from David Humphreys. He's the CEDIA chairman of the board. He stated, and I quote, "We are working diligently to make CEDIA more accessible by providing more regional education. The fact that these events are established and so successfully coupled with the notable support, this provides our manufacturers representative members, making this investment a win-win all the way around." Rich, I want to start with you on this one. This is a big deal, and this is a big, kind of news event for CEDIA. And I will disclose, I am on the board. I am a member of the board, and I'm not speaking in that capacity. I'm speaking for myself as a AVNation personnel as well as a local integrator. But Rich, when we look at this and when we see this happening, this is something that as long as I've been involved in this channel, I've been looking for more regional access, more localized content, things where I don't necessarily have to go to one event one time a year in one location. I want access to more things local to me or local-ish to me. Is that the big takeaway that you see with this?
At first, I was confused. At first, I was petrified. You know, but I will survive.
For a minute, I didn't know if you actually knew what you said. I was getting ready to say it. So you were confused, and then you were petrified, but you do plan to survive while attending these business summits?
I'm out that door.
For all of you who can't see this, Tim has lost his mind and about fallen out of his chair onto our brand new studio floor. All right, so let's bring this back around. When we look at this, this is obviously a rep-driven thing currently, but CEDIA is going to come in and really continue to push the educational aspect of it, right? How is this anything but a win for CEDIA members?
It is, and again, I think the first reaction really was. I mean, there was some angst, and speaking to some integrators, and just seeing it across social media, and the comments, once the show was announced. But one thing, we had a conversation earlier about this, was that integrators as a whole, there aren't a lot of large integrators around. It's just the nature of the CI channel. Typically, they're smaller companies, and although Expo is a great show, and I recommend that everybody go to it, doesn't always fall within the calendar for integrators. And so if it's based on the East Coast, the West Coast guys have a hard time going. If it's on the West Coast, the East Coast guys start griping about it. And then we try to put it in the middle, and then everybody gripes about it, right? So we have a hard time with that altogether. This show, I've never been to the Technology Summit because I'm based out of the West Coast. But on the West Coast, typically right after CEDIA, there is a similar show that's put on in the Bay Area that the local reps and the distributors get together. They rent out an area, and they basically have a mini expo at that point for the dealers who necessarily aren't large enough or maybe are in affiliated markets. And it gives them an opportunity for all of the reps to bring them together, to meet with manufacturers, and to provide the process. So I think that is always going to be a need. And again, I think the confusing part was, it first came up, was we just sold a show. Why are you buying a show? And that is still the confusing part for me. I get it. But if you're going to be buying one show, does that mean then the CEDIA is going to be coming and saying, now we plan on looking to replicate this in the middle of the country, in the Midwest? We're looking at doing this in the Pacific, in the mountain states. Here is our plan to be able to allow this to be a venue for all CEDIA members, regardless of concentrating it on the East Coast. This one, obviously, it was available. I can only assume as it was available, it made sense, and it was like, you're going to start somewhere. I think it can be very effective. My question then becomes, we have the CEDIA Business Exchange. Does that become part of that same group? Is it it's bringing more questions than answers at the moment. And I think it'll be something that I'm sure that CEDIA will have, hopefully, as a CEDIA member, an explanation as to, here is what our long-term view is now, that if we are a trade organization and we're focusing on education, and we're focusing on all of these things that, honestly, dealers have been complaining about, which is, I'm not getting necessarily as much of the nuts and bolts that I'm looking for, other than attending a trade show once a year, then I'm all for it. I think that for East Coast dealers, it's a great thing. I think for the rest of the country, we're going to be looking at this and saying, okay, what are you doing for us?
Very good. Tim, when I read through all the reports, and obviously I've seen a lot of them, the thing that gets me is they continually come back to this one-on-one. And specifically an intimate venue to provide a unique experience. Mm-hmm. You and I have run through CEDIA Expo together. I've run through ISE together. We've run through not NAB, but Infocom or Avixa together. We've done all these shows. And one thing that, no matter the scale of them, you can never really get that intimate environment. You can never really get that one-on-one unless, respectfully, you are a very big fish to that manufacturer. It just, or you're really good friends with somebody. which I know you have tons of friends in the industry, so you get those. But when you see what I did there,
I have two, and they're
I
both
know
on this
we're
show.
both here, and see how close you're getting this intimate conversation. But when you look at this, and Rich brought out some really good points as far as right now, this looks just like for the most part, an East Coast show, but also the desire for dealers to have that one-on-one experience. Is there that? I don't want to say is there that much value in one-on-one, but how do you quantify how great one-on-one experiences can be versus larger trade show events?
I will equate these shows, and I caveat here, I've never been to this specific show, any of them. But from the sounds of it and the talk of one-on-one, I'll equate them to two different shows that I've been to in the last year. One is AVI Systems regional events, and they are smaller, they're more intimate. They take place in the host cities, the cities where AVI Systems have offices, and they are intimate. They are smaller. The booths are smaller. The setups are smaller. But it does give the reps of each individual manufacturer the opportunity to spend time with not only the AVI Systems folks, but also potential clients. The other one is I got the chance to go cover AVI SPL's SaaS event. It's their annual Sales Acceleration Summit. It's their annual event where manufacturers come and AVI SPL employees bring their potential clients. It also is a chance for the design engineers, the programmers to kind of get a one-on-one with the manufacturers. I had a friend of mine who was a manufacturer, and they did the calculations, and I think they said they get anywhere between 8 and 12 minutes per attendee on any given trade show. That's Infocom, that's CEDIA, that's ISE, that's the majority, the big ones, right? Between 8 and 12 minutes. That's not a whole lot of time to go over if you have a lot of product to deliver, go over the ins and outs, the delivery schedule, list price versus what your actually the dealer price is, the programming features. So these regional shows are actually give folks a lot of opportunity to kind of do a deeper dive with the potential clients or the dealers that are actually putting this stuff in. The other side of that coin, though, is these manufacturers are not staffing them like they do a bigger show. So I would be interested and kind of curious.
It's 1 to 2 people as a rule, correct?
I'd be curious to see what their time spent is per person, all right? Because yes, you have a 100 meter by 100 meter booth at ISE, and you have 10,000 people in your booth that coming through there, and you're staffing it with 1,000 people. That's great. Are you also scaling that down? You're not going to have 1,000 people in Irvine, California, for Clear One or for Crestron or for whoever. So I'd be interested to see if the correlation between a bigger show time spent per attendee is equivalent to the bigger shows, or if it is more time.
Well, and I will say that would be a very interesting number to know, because I will say this: I went to a ADI Expo event a couple of weeks ago, and was able to talk with a couple of reps that I haven't seen in a while, because I don't get that 8 to 12 minutes, or only get that 8 to 12 minutes when I'm at the big events. But when I was talking to them, same thing. Like, it's a tabletop show. They can only show so many products or so many things, and we can.
Oh, you'd be surprised. I mentioned the AVI SPL event, and really quickly, Clear One, God love them. They brought every single SKU they had to.
Did they have a tower behind the wall?
It was 2 or 3 tables, and they had everything, and they were showing everything that they could possibly do. To their credit, they were showing everything. So sometimes you do have to do that, and
that is true. I will say the probably my best intimate experience, if you will, that I've had was, I want to say Chief does a road show, and they come to a local hotel in every city or multiple parts of a city, and you can set up a half hour or an hour appointment, and they will literally walk you through a boardroom, or I'm sorry, a ballroom of all their products, and go over everything, and really let you get that additional time that you might need. But back to the Tech and Biz summits, I think these are fantastic. I think the ability to get more people out in more local environments is fantastic, not only from access, but really from a community standpoint. If you're able to get out and connect with a lot of those people that are within the same region as you, I think that's fantastic.
Yep.
And I'm looking forward to what CEDIA is able to do with this and how they're able to expand to, continue to cover more of North America specifically. Canada too. See, right there, pulling the plug. All right, let's move on to our next story. This comes to us from The Verge, and you're probably asking, why the heck are we talking about The Verge?
Because it's an awesome site.
Well, give me a second. It is a good site, though, as Tim is killing my thing. But notwithstanding, Amazon has dropped its first-gen Ring doorbell from 100 and change down to 180, I believe, down to $100. Now, this is the first gen. This is not the Gen 2 that is more standard, but they're dropping that price since the acquisition. We kind of knew or expected that this was going to happen, that it definitely wasn't going to get more expensive. It was going to get cheaper down the road. Rich, I'm going to start with you again on this because Tim took so long on the last question. When we look at this, in all reality, it's not necessarily a huge deal to your standard home technology professional. Ring dropped the price of the doorbell. It's a commodity. Who really cares? What I wanted to ask you about was, I don't so much care that Amazon or Ring has dropped that price. What concerns me is I saw they dropped the price to, $100, $125 in Canada. And I immediately went to two of my suppliers for that product. And let me tell you what I found. They have not dropped their price at all. Gave it a couple of days. Checked just now as we're looking at it, just to make sure my information is as current as possible. That price still hasn't dropped. Rich, as integrators, when we see stuff like this and we see some of these devices that, they're not the bread and butter of what we do every day, but they're still products that we use and that we utilize and that our customers love. We're selling some of their Spotlight cam things later this week to a client. When we see this kind of price shift, what does this do to our distribution model or our purchasing system? Because I don't want to go buy this at almost $100 more than I can buy it from Amazon.
It's twofold, and it's an issue. And I'll probably recount a story that I just personally ran across last week. Kind of.
Could you? Please.
I can, but I'll hold off, but I digress. The concern first is that you had a dedicated product at a price. You had support, you had a culture, everything that went on. And every time a company gets acquired, the first thing you get from the press release, because the owners have to stay on in order to collect their checks, is that they have to be able to stand behind with whoever purchased them and said, we're going to continue how we've always operated and maintain our company culture. And, the company XYZ has been XYZ and will continue to be XYZ. And then a year later happens. And, my concern is that I'm now going to have to call Amazon for tech support. And I'm going to have to decide whether I'm dealing with an Amazon vacuum cleaner, an Amazon doorbell, an Amazon camera, or an Amazon blender first from my touch tone selections before I get sent over to somebody. And I've got to waste 20 minutes with somebody who goes, by the way, we got to send you over to, a different support person. So, but also it's there's some issues in terms of a credibility issue for integrators as well, because you have an integrator who's coming in at X. And within the course of a week, they've sold a project. Now, you either have a client who may pull up, a Verge article and say, hey, this thing just got cut in half. What are we going to do about it? The other option is, like I said, you pull up with a distributor. Their pricing hasn't changed because they bought them at a different price. And it puts the integrator in a very, very difficult position because everybody on the front end of the line is trying to get what they paid for. And the integrator is the one sitting there going, well, I've got two options. It was an ethical issue. It's like, do I eat it? Great. Everybody else got their money. And I'm now paying for the privilege of working for the client. Or, do I pass the cost on, which isn't necessarily great because you might be charging a client a premium for something they could have bought, at a reduced price. We see it this day and age now with TVs. I mean, TVs is a perfect example. I mean, I can't tell you how many times that a manufacturer has issued a price reduction, and and all of a sudden an end user could walk into a big box store and get the same exact display that was available in distribution for cheaper than what an integrator could buy it for from distribution.
Yep.
Warranty issues. So it's going to happen. We're going to see the consolidation, and it is a concern that I have for the CI channel because there is an acquisition spree that is going on. And
since you bring that up, since you bring up the M&As, and we've covered that on this show extensively because it's been a huge deal. It's been a huge newsmaker. You this week, you dealt with something that a lot of us have dealt with, where a company has a certain culture, they have a certain way of doing business, and it doesn't matter what that way is, but they had a certain way of doing business. They got acquired, and fairly slowly or really quickly, depending how you look at it, that culture was eroded away. And now the service that you expect to get, you didn't really get. How did, not only for the end users, because if you're doing your job properly, I'd argue a lot of times you're able to insulate your client from this drama. But as integrators, how do you deal with that when, all of a sudden a product that you've really enjoyed, really liked working with, you don't feel comfortable selling because you feel like you may not be getting the support or whatever from that new owner of the company?
Well, it really, where it comes from and what you're having to base your decisions on now is sometimes where you're going to pick a company over another is going to be based on their warranties. And I've never, in the CI industry, a warranty has never really been one of the highest decision-making points when I've worked with a vendor. It just hasn't, because they're typically smaller companies, and there was always an exception case that you could work with. Where I'm concerned right now because of these M&As is not with new purchases. There are lots of dealers during that period when the acquisition changes over that are dealing with legacy problems. And so as an example, I'll kind of cut to the chase. So I had a product that was a legacy product. A company was acquired by a large distributor a couple of years ago at this point. So basically during the period of the warranty period of the unit, we were covered. That's fine. But the issue occurred with what happens with the device that's out of warranty. Mm-hmm. And when an acquisition happens, and I have a feeling we'll probably see this with Ring and with Amazon and everything else, there becomes a decision by the parent company to say, there's a certain point where we're just not going to honor or fix, or we don't have the parts for the old stuff. We bought this company for the new stuff, and we'll have parts and distribution because we have our own vendors, we have our own process, we have our own ways of doing things, and we're able to support our products going forward much better. The issue is, in the CI industry, you're going to be dealing with anywhere from typically 2, 3 to 5 years of limited warranty on a product. I mean, there are some companies who are saying, hey, look, we're offering lifetime warranty, limited lifetime warranty, 10-year warranty. Again, these are now things that I'm thinking about. And the reason being is that, again, when I dealt with this distributor was, that's well and good, but this was a legacy product. We're not repairing it. It's not even, you can't even pay us to repair it, which was, I was expecting. I expected a part broke, it's out of warranty. You go through a typical repair process. Internal repair or a third-party repair service. There is a process for high-ticket items. And again, this is not a $99 video streaming device. This was a 4-figure, almost 5-figure device that had at that point a shelf life of 2.5 years. That in the CI industry and in the luxury market, and part of it is that we're dealing with technology, is that we are dealing with more and more, for lack of a better term, disposable electronic goods.
Right.
Items that are within 6 months to a year become part of an upgrade path. Lower cost, reduce expectations, I say, more than anything else, because you're spending $99 for a box, you're not gonna have the same expectations for that $99 box as you do have a $4,000 box. But the issue becomes when you do have a $4,000 box, what happens when that breaks? What happens when you exceed a period? And that's something that from a service-based industry, which is what CI dealers are, right? They're not box movers. We know that. We've been campaigning against it. Is that you are a service industry now. You are a digital concierge. You are a technologist. You are all of these things. You are not an installer. You're not a box salesman. So as part of your service process, you've got to be covered in terms of your overall profitability of a job. And that's what I always talk to dealers about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not worried about the profit that you made today. Guys will come to me. I made 35 points. I made 40 points, 50 points. And the first question I ask is, okay, now let's amortize that over 3 years. How many service calls have you made? How many parts have you replaced? What are all of the things that have occurred in a project that you're not being compensated for because you, as the integrator, are providing your labor warranty. And let's take a look at your overall profitability of the project. Stuff like this is what ultimately affects the long-term life expectancy of a company. And, which is why you should go to the CEDIA Business Exchange to learn more about your running.
Nice. I didn't even have to plug that. So, all right. So, Tim, let me ask you this. In the past, you normally, as an integrator, you might revisit some of your purchasing policies, some of your distributors, some of your manufacturers. You might look at that product list once or twice a year, usually at Expo.
Yeah.
You'd show up and you walk around, see, oh yeah, no, maybe that could replace brand A that we've been using for so long. With the volatility from manufacturers, as far as who's being acquired, who's not, all of these different things that have been happening in this channel, the increased invasion, if you will, of GAFA. At what point or how often do dealers and integrators need to be looking at everything that's going on? Have we moved to the point that this is almost a daily occurrence? That as soon as you hear the news of someone doing something, you have to start paying it more than a cursory glance?
I think that's actually when you do it, is when you hear the not just the rumors, but the actual press release of an M&A, of a merger and acquisition. Then you have to assess whether or not your current relationships make sense, right? And that goes both for if you are a dyed-in-the-wool fanboy of the person doing the acquiring, or you are a longtime user of the one being acquired. I think you have to do an assessment of both, because here's the thing. Because, let's say that the brand A was the one doing the acquiring and you're a longtime customer of theirs, their strategies may change. Their product offerings may change. Obviously, if you are a longtime user of the one being acquired, all sorts of things, and Rich has very eloquently laid out some of the issues that all sorts of folks have had once that company has been acquired and fully enveloped and into the new company. You're not really guaranteed a whole lot of anything once the warranties have run out, and once the product cycle has come to an end. These companies have a strategy. The reason that they acquire them for all sorts of reasons: for the technology, for the intellectual properties, for the people that are working there.
Mm-hmm.
They may have no interest in the products, even though you think it's the greatest thing in the world. They're like, okay, yeah, great. You know what? Once the warranty runs out, once the product life cycle comes to an end, we're done. And so every time you hear an announcement of an M&A, and if you were a heavy user of either the M, or the person doing the acquiring, or the acquiree, then you need to assess it.
Very good. All right, gentlemen, let's wrap it there. That's all the time we have. Uncle Richie, thank you so much for being here and joining us on our lovely day. If people want to connect with you, and they definitely should, where can they do that?
Well, first, obviously, I make sure that Gloria Gaynor is riding, side saddle with me the entire time that I'm broadcasting. If I'm making sure that I'm
oh my God,
MCI. Otherwise, you can, at Gloria Gaynor Twitter. No.
Wow.
At R Fregosa on Twitter. You can find me at Fregosa Design. You can obviously find me here in the hall, roaming the halls of AVNation here on ResiWeek, or coming soon, a new episode of A State of Control with my good friend Steve Kumar.
Very good. Tim, thanks for joining us again. I always appreciate the majority of your input. Where See, I said it with a straight face. You couldn't hold it together. I had it. I'm
looking at Gloria Gaynor's Twitter handle. That's why.
If people want to connect with you, follow you, where can they do that?
At Gloria Gaynor. Seriously, go follow her right now. You can follow me if you want to at TD Albright. I'm watching anybody but the Blues in the NHL playoffs because they're not in it this year. But you'll find us.
Go Jets. Jets.
Actually, I'm rooting for the Kings. I'm rooting for the Kings. So
I feel like you're sucking up to Casey.
No, well, there is that.
Yeah.
But I'm a West Coast. West.
That's
Coast
my boy
conference,
though.
But
He's local. Dowdy.
West Conference. Yeah.
Just down the road. All right. Thank you again for that lovely hockey trivia. Thanks again for joining us. If you'd like to find me, you can follow me at Matt D. Scott on Twitter and every other social platform. Please connect. But more importantly, please stop by AVNation.tv. You'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our underwriters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you support them as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek.